Hi everyone, this is Matt 2 Show with Intro Stats, and today we're looking at a problem from my book, Intro to Statistics for Community College Students. Today we're looking at section 3A, and we're looking at problem number 6. So the directions, by the way, for this problem was to read the statement and try to figure out what the null and alternative hypothesis would be, what type of test, and then what is the claim. So we're trying to figure out the null hypothesis, H0, the alternative hypothesis, HA, and what the claim would be and what type of test we're dealing with, all from this one statement. Okay, so let's see if we can do that. It says, test the claim that more than 10% of the world is left-handed. Okay, so again, this is a statement where they only gave us really one statement. The only statement they gave us was the claim. They didn't really give us the opposing view. They basically just gave us that one statement. Test the claim that more than 10% of the world is left-handed. Okay, well I know right away it's a percentage, right? That's very key, right? They're making a claim about percentage. Being left-handed is categorical data, so we see that this is a proportion, right? We're looking at the proportion. Okay, so again, what's the symbol that we use in stats for a population proportion? Well, that would be P or pi, depending on what your stat teacher is using. Sometimes you'll see stat books with P, sometimes you'll see them with pi. I use pi. This sounds like pi is more than, greater than 10%. Remember, more than does not mean more than or equal to. This more than just means more than. So it sounds like it's going to be that pi is greater than 10%, or again, in computer programs, you really want to get in the habit of writing your percentage as a decimal proportion. So I would write it as pi is more than 0.1, 10%. Just divide that 10% by 100 and you get 0.1. So there's my claim. Pi is greater than 0.1, right? And I write the word claim next to it because that's what they said in the article and that's what they think is true. Okay. Now, I need the opposing view. Now, this is where it gets tricky. They didn't really give me the opposing view. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and use the opposite. So, what's the opposite of greater than? Well, we kind of talked about this in the lecture. The opposite of greater than is not less than. It's actually less than or equal to. So, again, I'm going to go ahead and write the opposite of the claim. Remember, greater than points to the right. Always put the letter on the left and the number on the right. So pi is greater than 0.1. Notice that looks like an arrow pointing to the right. Less than or equal to should point to the left. So I'm going to get pi is less than or equal to 0.1. That would be the opposite of the claim, or the opposing view. Okay? Now, which of these, now we have to decide, once you write the claim and the opposite of the claim, then you try to decide which one's the null and which one's the alternative. Well, what we said was the null hypothesis, the one that H0, is the statement that has an equal to part. So it looks like this one is the only one that has an equal to part. This greater than does not have an equal to part, so that must be HA. So now I know this one must be HA and this one must be H0. Okay, so it looks like there's our null and alternative hypothesis. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Most people in stats do not like writing less than or equal to. Some stat teachers are okay with it, but a lot of people in stats and data science actually do not like to write less than or equal to as the null. They actually prefer to just change this to always equal to. And that's okay. So you could really, it depends on what your stat teacher prefers. You could write it as less than or equal to, or you could write it as just straight equal to. So we really could write this null and alternative hypothesis in two different ways. Notice I'm actually not a big, I'm okay actually with either way if my students write either way. Remember, the HA is the one that's going to decide the test. So in all actuality, in terms of the numbers being calculated, these two are really the same test. Since our HA is a greater than, remember greater than points to the right, always the sign in the HA is what tells you, not the claim, not the null. The HA sign tells you the tail. So since HA is a greater than, it points to the right, that would be a right-tailed test. So since our HA was greater than, this is a right-tailed test. Okay, so you could really write the answer either way. I probably would write the answer like this. H0 where pi is equal to 0.1 and then HA pi is greater than 0.1. But I would accept it if you wrote it either way.